harvest time. And so these summaries of what happens in the group sometimes turn out to be mini lectures in themselves. So I would like to ask you to stick to, you don't have to cover everything, but some of the most important ideas that came up. And Anja, you're usually walking around with a phone, with a microphone, so maybe before you give it to somebody else. Yeah, great.
Okay, the blue group. We try to cover all the questions, but the process of healing took a little time. Main thing is that we started with that healing starts from within, and that a healer is someone who helps to see causes and help to work out causes and helps to understand processes. He's able to see, maybe not in a physical way, but beyond the material plane, or to think beyond that. There was mentioned forgiveness practice in order to solve new causes, new thoughts, not keep thinking about the old things, but change. And the healer was seen as not a healer, but a healing facilitator, because the healing has to be done by the sick person. We refer to the readings, how the Brotherhood helps, by transmitting energy from a higher plane. And as Judge says, that forgiveness is important, also in our group, if we want to, the TS to be an instrument for the Brotherhood, or the hierarchy of compassion. And it was said that part of becoming whole, that there is can be a strong analogy with a divorce. It is the ability to learn and respect both parents and see the good in the different streams and the specific talents they have, and to become independent thinkers. Start to think for yourself and base your conclusions on your own experiences. So, the healer can be considered as someone who teaches the laws of nature, like oneness, connectedness, karma, and we can see misery as an opportunity to heal, and also sickness or illness. And there was also some talk about the dynamic tension that can happen when opposing forces well, try to work together. And that's what I have to say from the group.
Right.
Dancing, yes, that's also something. If forces opposed, you can avoid each other, but you can also interact. And maybe it can become like a dance. Well, I don't know.
Leading to all kinds of creative new solutions and perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
That's
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So you hold the mic, so where's it going? For the next short summary. Yeah, great. Some highlights, please, from your group, Nancy.
Okay, we were the Lilac group. We started out answering each question individually, but then it all kind of just merged together and one went into the other. So I'm just going to throw out what we came up with. The first question was, what defines a true healer? You just try to do the best you can. You know, the master said, just try. So as long as you know, and realize that everyone is doing the best they can do for where they're at. So you just try and do the best that you can. It's impossible to be completely healed or to completely heal someone else. Because there's always something, and it's going to move into something else and something else. Even if a person if someone cuts their finger and someone gives them a Band-Aid, well, they're a healer because they took care of what had to be done with kindness and for the highest good at that moment. So just giving someone a Band-Aid, a kind word, a smile can do so much. We thought it was important, instead of looking at the disability and what needed to be fixed, to see the person as whole and complete. Just visualize them that way instead of focusing on the misalignment.
Would that work for the different theosophical branches as well?
Well, you tell me.
What's the conclusion of your group? So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, we'll get down to where we talked about that a little bit. Okay. And then we brought up Jesus, who, you know, a lot of people see as a great healer. Just being, you know, it's integrity, just staying in your integrity and for the highest good. And it works. And then we focused on, well, we can use the different theosophical groups as an example. Look at the differences not as a problem. It's an opportunity. We all have these differences, and as we work through them and hear another person's point of view, we can learn so much and grow from that. So instead of looking at them as a disadvantage and problems, it's an opportunity. We talked about where karma comes into it, where we all have our own karma, and we have group karma. We have there's karma all over the place, and how much that comes into play, and where the line is. You know, if you're interfering in someone else's karma, like how do we know when to help? And again, we felt that it came down to integrity. It's all about your motive and doing the best that you can do in the moment. And as far as different theosophical groups, realize that we all have the same goals. We're all Theosophists, right? And we all want the best for Theosophy. So again, focus on what we have in common instead of the differences. And then we thought, as far as organizations, healing within organizations, to really take a look at, well, what are the ills? Interview people, talk to people, find out what the misalignment is before you can even begin to work on something. But it's important to get everyone's opinion, talk to everyone. And we can't really heal someone else, but we can help them and teach them to help themselves. And it's important to have the right motive, but also the right knowledge. You know, you can try to heal someone, but if you don't have the knowledge that is needed, it could get a little bit complicated. So the motive and having the right knowledge. And there's never an end to learning. We never get it done, which is great. Every day we continue on this journey and we learn something else, and it's just so exciting. You know, we shouldn't really sit back and say, well, we learned this and we read this book. Every day we just learn more and more and more. And think about admitting to ourselves that we don't know another person 100%. What's going on with them? None of us do. So not to assume anything, just know we don't know the whole picture. And then we talked about discipline and how important it is to not only have the right motive and the right goal, but discipline, to be disciplined and structured and stay on that path. And it was brought up, the word disciple. A healer is a disciple. Oh, and as we move forward and we progress and we heal and we work with organizations, it's important to go back and help people who are where we were before. We have a duty to go back and give back. As far as conflicts with other people, it's important to create an atmosphere of trust so they know they're safe, and stay neutral. Keep yourself balanced. And agree to disagree. You know, we disagree. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I think an interesting question that popped up was if healing is being whole, and that means we had a definition that was that all our 7 principles are in balance, and that to be a good healer you have to be whole. So that requires quite a lot. So that ideal is pretty well. We in our group didn't know any human being that has that requirements. So then the question came up: can you heal when you still are in disharmony yourself? And then we ask, well, maybe it's not a static thing. So you're either in harmony or in disharmony. And it's more something relative that goes on, and that you can be a healer. Just that then the example came up from if someone cuts his finger and you give him a Band-Aid, well, at that moment you are in sort of a harmony with that person, and also in harmony with yourself, because you know you have to do something for your physical part to make it in balance with and functioning with the other parts. So it's just also something very relative. Yeah, that's just, I thought it was, well, that whole idea of being in harmony is relative. So, and of course, to be a good healer, you work from the inside out, and you have to go, well, to the root of things we discussed as well. But I think you can, with the right motive, you can be, well, you can already heal someone, even if you're not a perfect 7-principle balanced Dian-Choan. So that's just something we discussed. Yeah.
So have a healing influence. Just maybe by being in the presence of somebody. Yeah, all right, thank you. Yeah, just a sec. We're on a journey, and being on a journey is exciting, right? Right, and so ITC is also on a journey, which is, I think we can all agree, it's exciting. But we don't know where we're going. We never have. You know, we have this poster on the wall that says the Naarden Declaration, but where is it? How do we get there? We all have the same goal, exactly. And what we really hope to get out of this conference is, let's say, some driving instructions. Maybe we need to pick the vehicles that we're going to use, the roads that we're going to take. So when you listen to each other, and basically that's why we do the harvest here, is because there's all these different beehives or all these different fields of flowers and ideas pop up. And when you share, as a scribe, you share them back. You can never be complete. You don't have to be complete. But we would like to know what's going on in the other places as well. So we cross-pollinate. This is the cross-pollination, right? And what we really hope to do after dinner tonight is to get some ideas from you. And they don't have to be fully developed, but just some ideas of what is next? Where do we go? How does the healing process within ITC take place? And how can that help being a healing force for the world? How do we establish that nucleus of brotherhood? So when you listen to each other in these sessions here or in the little beehives, see what ideas you pick up or what ideas pop up. And let's see if we can, I'm going to ask you later on, I'm going to repeat it. And if not, then Jonathan is going to remind me. I hope that everybody after dinner, when you come back here, you have one sentence. Just one thing. It's always nice to hear something from everybody. Just one sentence, one idea, one suggestion, one thing that stuck with you. No mini lectures, just one sentence. Or maybe even one word. All right? So we go to Siglinde, please.
Well, what our group did adds very nicely up to what we heard until now, especially what Erwin added. So it is very easy to follow now the ideas everybody already uttered. So what defines a true healer? Just two ideas. A true healer, we said, is in the intent of the healer. That means impersonality qualifies a true healer, and he acts from compassion point of view. So that was just to add on everything what we already heard. Then question 2, I make it really short, as you see. How do we become a true healer individually, organizationally, and among theosophical groups? There we said trying to live theosophy, to study and to bring it into practice in our groups and in society is the way to do that. And a pure heart is essential for this. Apart from good intention, discernment is needed, which comes from our buddhi part. So I hope I did give it as good as possible. Now, the last question was the most important one for us. I mean, we had a very lively discussion on it. How does a strong nucleus deal with differences of opinion and conflict? And we had many examples for that, but the, most colorful, I think, example was, which we heard from Jim Tepfer. He quoted, or he told us about Carl Rogers, who said, most of the problems in people communicating is the illusion of communicating. And he gave us such a nice example of the marriage counseling. Would you do that, please?
Let me go up here so people don't have to turn their heads. Many years ago, Raghav and I was discussing something with us, many students, and one of the things he pointed out was the problem with so much communication is the illusion that you're communicating. And then he gave the wonderful example from Carl Rogers, and this is what was so compelling. He said Carl Rogers did marriage counseling. And so one of the things that he did, he was a humanist psychologist, Carl Rogers. So he had the couple sit down facing each other. And so he would say, now, what I want you to do, he'd point to the wife, for example, and say, now, you tell him exactly what the problem is, what upsets you, what concerns you. And he could say, then Rogers would say, you could see the husband sitting there at the edge of the chair, ready to react. So Rogers would then say, now, before she speaks, when she has finished, you may not respond to her. What? You may not respond to her. You must tell her what you heard her say. Oh, okay. So then she would speak her piece, and then Carl Rogers says, now you tell her what you heard her say. And so the husband would try to find the words and put it, and then Rogers would say, okay, now he'd turn to the wife, now you tell him, is that what you meant? And so she would have to think and distill, well, not exactly. What I really meant was this. And so he would have them go back and forth, and what would happen is finally they would distill the problem to its more pure essential form, and then they would discover that a lot of the problem wasn't a problem. And, oh, is that what you meant? Well, you know, and then pretty soon they would go on to explain it. And see, so by the time you do this, we were discussing this in group in terms of different views about what Theosophy is, what's pure Theosophy, what's simple Theosophy. And we were fortunate because we had Tom in our group who decided to be the Socratic gadfly and be sure to sting us into, out of our lethargy, an easy harmony, because he wanted us to be challenged. And so we were challenged, and we were able to understand the point, which Johanna and others articulated so beautifully. But that often, if you just come to understand and you give simple reasons, you don't have to agree. Understanding itself is healing. And that was one of the beautiful things that came out, I think, of our whole group.
Thank you for sharing that example. Wonderful. So who else has something to add on from one of the other groups? Maybe orange group, or I don't know what colors we're missing so far.
I have no idea what they were thinking when they picked me to have you suffer.
So Joe, you don't have to be complete. Just what can you add on?
Well, I haven't begun. You don't want me to be complete already? Okay. You see the warning signs coming. Okay, I understand.
It's already 2:45. So
oh, so it's my fault now. Oh, okay. We began with trying to understand, trying to distill how to communicate Theosophy to people who are new to it, not those who are already familiar. And we wrestled a little bit with the concept of diluting the message versus simplifying the message, especially tailoring the message towards beginners. And one of the beautiful quotes that came out of that conversation was by St. Francis of Assisi, who said, "Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words." And we'll get back to this concept in a little bit. Towards the end, we circled back. You'll see how. One of the things that came out, we concluded that you need to tailor the message to each user, or learner rather, individually and separately, and need to use intelligence to do that because, again, the people have to be ready and to accept this message. So to do so, we spoke about encouraging people's curiosity instead of just blatantly slamming the message at them. Get them to tease it out of you, so to speak, and make them curious about it. Speak on their level of understanding. And very often there are concepts like universal language and attitude, meaning love is a universal concept understood, universal language, compassion. If you can tap into the universal messages, universal languages involved, you can always explain even Theosophy to people. We then spoke about the concept of what defines a true healer. It's a difficult topic, and one of the things that we distilled from that was modify the environment and conditions that of the person that you're attempting to heal, and the result will follow as a result of that improved environment and conditions. And I couldn't help but think of Kim, who spoke about the acidity levels and alkalinity levels inside the nucleus of the cell. As you modify the environment around the healing that's necessary, you will affect the healing in itself as well. We then forwarded, and we then continued on to, by properly modifying the environment and conditions, in effect, you're reaching the higher stages of the spiritual man, the Atma Buddhi Mana planes of their understanding. So, and one of the beautiful examples given by Elton was how this actually shows that we affect the manas and the Buddhic plane of man by continuously instilling certain lessons in people. And the early example was an experiment that Elton describes with monkeys, where a group of monkeys were taught how to crack certain foods open with stones. And soon thereafter, other groups of monkeys that were never introduced to this concept began doing the same thing. Of course, this experiment was escalated later to humans, where it was shown to us that in the beginning of the century, when typewriters came along, we learned that it took a very long time for people to learn how to type fluently and quickly. But today, my kids were typing in 2 weeks. I mean, so these abilities, this knowledge of new experiences and new things is literally drawn from the manas plane, from the higher planes of consciousness, as the collective humanity becomes more and more proficient in these things. And this was an interesting revelation, an experimental proof of such. We then continued on to how to become a true healer. We centered on the statements of, we liked, particularly our group, liked the statements of Raghavan Iyer, who said that there are 3 conditions to become a true healer, namely unconditionality of commitment, magnanimity of mind, and reverence. I think we all understand those. And again, following that, we circled back to how is it that we communicate these messages to lay people or to people who are new to Theosophy. And we spoke about the necessity to properly listening to them, where if you're attempting to teach somebody, you need to first understand where they're at, where they're coming from. And very often, unlike me who talks a lot, we need to exercise silence. So we need to be silent, and we need to draw in and understand what it is that these people are experiencing and going through in order to understand how to help them and how to teach them. So silence and quietude goes a long way. And as I remember one of the quotes from a Buddhist monk who said that listening is really loving. As you listen, truly listen to another human being, truly attentively listen to another human being, you're giving them a modicum of love. So we concluded with the fact that you need to properly listen, be silent, be quiet when you have to, and even listening to yourself very often, not just others. So that was, in a nutshell, our entire discussion.
Just out of curiosity, one quick question, if I may. You said, I think we understand all these 3 criteria. So where are we as a theosophical movement in understanding that and actually bringing it into practice?
The 3 criteria you're referring to, Raghavan Iyer's criteria?
So where are we as a...
Were we in this room, or
Yeah.
we as a Theosophical Society as a whole?
Theosophical movement?
Well, the three criteria, unconditionality, again, we're talking about how to become a true healer. So my understanding, well, where are we? Frankly, I do not know. We are, I cannot speak for all of you. I can only speak for me. Okay. My understanding is that unconditionality of commitment implies complete and utter selflessness, altruism. You do not heal somebody while you're afraid that you'll pick up their disease while you're healing them. You do not heal somebody because you want to make a buck out of it. So I understand, my understanding is of what Raghavan Iyer is saying here is that unconditionality of commitment, and others have said it too, not just Iyer. I mean, Steiner said it, many others have said it. When you go to heal somebody, you need complete and utter altruism without self-aggrandizement or self-love. There was a case when we spoke about in our group about Henry Steele Olcott when he was healing people in Ceylon, Sri Lanka. There was another colleague of his who wanted to learn how to heal just like Steele Olcott did. And he was told, fundamentally saying, no, we will not teach you how to do this, because the reason being was that he wanted to know how to heal. The issue was about him, whereas Olcott fundamentally didn't care. He just wanted to heal. It was nothing about Olcott's knowledge of healing. It was about the fact that he just needed to heal. So we spoke about that as well. And the third, reverence. Well, we can talk a long time about that, but reverence of what? Reverence of your higher self, the Atma Buddhimana, the fact that your soul and my soul are up there looking at us right now. Reverence of, the monad. I mean, we can reverence up until the cows come home. It's a beautiful world out there if we can only perceive it, So, to me, it's a never-ending story.
Thank you. So it's a very long journey still ahead. Thank you very much, Joe. Last one.
Basically, and again, it was what is a healer, and how that ties into a group, and then perhaps ITC and the idea of Nucleus and all of that. But basically, the healer is, and it's not necessarily a being, but a healer is impersonality, compassion, real knowledge beyond ignorance, the gunas and the nidanas, empathy, reaching out and caring, and affiliation with, as was said, the higher Buddhimanas, helping to become the whole or harmonizing all. It is karma as a healing and harmonizing force. It is sharing a vision and action of unity as one. It is helping others to help self. It is being self-reliant and learning how to heal thyself. In terms of group function, the core issue was cohesiveness. It is a bonding which must be present around a dominant idea, a unity, a higher purpose, a service, a brotherhood. And we must embrace the inspiring dominant idea as an embodiment. And again, that is about unity, higher purpose, and service. In terms of differences, the core thought was always going back to the chief goal, the primary principles, the focus, the objective, embracing the primary vision. It was keeping all aligned to the central nucleus or idea of that vision. And then we got into a side discussion about whether ITC was a nucleus, whether it was really a cell, perhaps maybe a stem cell, and then trying to differentiate out where that original message is in there. And so in terms of solving or working through conflict, it came down to taking on or owning the point of view of another, appreciating that point of view, and then using that to embrace a greater ideal of the whole. and hopefully coming up with creative these solutions.
It's almost very nice thoughts to take to dinner with us, and maybe to continue a little bit on that. So if the cohesion is strong enough in this ITC platform, then we can continue our journey. But not only that, when we get to know each other better and we start to learn to trust each other again, and I think that's where we're at right now, we also start to discover all kinds of possibilities. Because we learn from the different traditions and where they've gone and what they've developed and what they know. And so if we start to use those possibilities, what would be next steps? So what we're looking for is next conferences. What are we doing? How are we going to be a healing force for theosophical organizations, for the world? How are we going to be an inspiration for theosophists? So maybe it's good, there's paper on all the tables and there's pencils on all the tables. Just somewhere in the next hour and a half, write down one sentence, something that pops up. And we hope to see you back at
7:30.